what the research found. When they went through and did this research, they basically, as I said, talked to sort of 100 and odd people, 170 people, and they did vignettes. They did little captions or little stories, change comms pieces in all of the different styles. And they asked some specific questions. And so they asked questions like, how did that style make you feel from a motivational point of view? Did it motivate you? So just clicking through some of these results. So when they asked that question of the audience from a motivation point of view, actually the communication styles that came out as the most motivating were extroverted. So that's that sense of talking with enthusiasm and positivity, followed by reward-reactor. So that was that sense of optimism in the way that it was communicated. At the other end of the scale, actually the inspiration-driven. So that sense of, yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Very flexible, adaptable. Made people feel less motivated, and outcome focused, which was that kind of strong sense. Yeah, Leanne, no worries. That strong sense of this is performance, this is what we need to achieve, and this is about accountability for achieving it, came over created a much lower level of motivation. I've got probably 3 or 4 examples, so I'll just click through those. Next, one of the other questions they asked was how much trust those communication styles engendered in you in the leadership. So again, that positive sort of enthusiastic style of extroverted created a lot of trust. What was really interesting, and again, this comes back to mixing styles, was the paradox that actually very close in terms of creating trust was that more introverted style, that more reflective, that more intimate way of communicating. And actually the third one was down to earth, which is again that more sort of practical, reliable style of communicating. So from a trust point of view, a real paradox going on there, suggesting that actually different styles worked for different people really effectively. But again, the bottom 2, inspiration driven and outcome focused. They then asked the question around clarity and how clearly the message came across. So through that lens of clarity, actually that's where you started to see some of the more structured communication styles coming through. So discipline driven, so talking to that style that's perhaps more around organized, reliable, setting clear expectations, and also the down to earth style. So that's sort of grounded in reality, practical approach to what's happening with the change. And again, introverted was there as well. And at the bottom, they switched around, but the bottom one was inspiration driven and then outcome focused. When they asked the question around how positive it made the audience feel about the change, the ones that made the audience feel most positive, I guess as you'd kind of expect, were back to the optimistic, enthusiastic approach, and that sense of enthusiasm and belief and optimism about the future. The ones that made people feel the least positive, again, were those our favorite 2 of inspiration driven and outcome focused. They asked then a question around how open do you feel to engaging in the change, having been communicated to in this way? And that's where people focused came up. That sense of communicating in a collaborative, empathetic way really helped with engagement, and probably why it came out quite highly in your responses because of the way I framed the question. But also engagement came out quite strongly with extroverted and reward-reactor again, that sort of sense of enthusiasm and optimism. And again, the bottom 2 were inspiration-driven and outcome-focused. And then the overall sort of summary was they asked a question, they asked a number of different other questions, which I haven't put on here, but they're in the research paper. They asked a question around what was your overall view of the quality of the message based on those different styles? And again, you get this bit of paradox going on because a lot of people suggesting that they really felt it was a great message when communicated in an extroverted way, enthusiasm, positive, engaging. but also a lot of people communicate, suggesting that they felt it's a great message when it's communicated in that more reflective, introverted way. And again, overall, as you'd be no surprise, that based on the previous ones we looked at, inspiration driven, outcome focused at the bottom. So a couple of thoughts, just or observations coming out of that, just as we wrap up, and then we can have a chat about this and a discussion about it for the last 10 minutes or something. To one of the points that was in the commentary or in the questions in the chat, actually no one style wins. There is no perfect style. It's a blend of different styles. But there is certainly some styles that come over consistently as being really important. So styles like that enthusiastic, sociable, upbeat messaging is really important to engaging people, and that's kind of typified by that extrovert style. But while no one style particularly wins, there's really interestingly one style that definitely lost, and that was that outcome focused style. And that was the style I talked about it as JFDI, and that's the sense of it's very direct, it's very tough, it's saying this is what we have to do, this is let's just make it happen, let's go ahead and do it. And I guess that's kind of part of why I found this really interesting, because my observation is similar to some of the observation in the Menti that you did, that the style one of the styles I see most often used in change programs is that outcome focused style. It's leadership going, this is what we need to do, go do it, and creating that lack of engagement as a result. Another observation, paradox is a really valuable tool in communications, actually, which is back to the no one style. So blending that extroverted enthusiasm, but following it up with some more intimate one-to-one conversations, small group conversations. It isn't a one style fit all. And also different styles support different objectives at different times in the change program. So if your objective is to create clarity, you're doing a progress update or something, actually consciously framing it more in that discipline driven or down to earth language is really helpful. Whereas maybe when you launch it or when you're giving a different type of communication, you might lean more into that extroverted side. Also, you can overwork it. So you've probably all been involved in the rah-rah speeches where extrovert's gone over the top and it just becomes a droning noise that everyone switches off to because it's just loud and noisy and isn't based in reality. So we can overextend in any of these styles.